Vielen herzlichen Dank, Marlies. Das mache ich sehr gerne. Ich begrüße
Thank you, Marlies. It's so my pleasure. So I should like to cordially welcome you to our current session of Listen to the East. I think it's going to be an interesting meeting because the plan is that 3 days before the election in Poland, we would like to talk about the situation of church and society in Poland. So on the 15th of October, next Sunday at 9 p.m., it's going to be very interesting. Probably even before that, it's going to be interesting because then they start to count the votes for the votes for the same and so on, and connected to that. And I'm going to talk this also in a moment. There will also be a referendum regarding 4 political questions. So for months, Poland has been in an election mode, and we could see that sensitive topics became more and more aggressively discussed. So migration relationship to Ukraine, to Germany, and also some dynamic developments. For example, a couple of days ago, the commander of the armed forces stepped down, and this is also leads to lots of questions. Does this have an effect on the election campaign? Will this have a negative impact on peace and so on? So on the other hand, we have a strong mobilization of this large opposition bloc, this civic platform headed by Donald Tusk. So a couple of days ago, there was a large demonstration, which was the March of the Million Hearts. That's how it was called. So I think it wasn't really a million of people, but it said that it was about 800,000 people in the streets of Warsaw. So the opinion polls, they provide lots of different results. So for a long time, it was forecast that there will be a majority for peace again. It's still the case, but still there's a possibility that the civic platform might be able to form the government with others. And obviously the people, the undecided people, could really make the difference there. So how has society changed during peace government, and how can we see it in the societal organizations and so on? And so there's an alliance of the throne and the altar. Can we talk about this really? So how do the 2 speakers see this? And we would like to have a look at that. So we've invited 2 guests that have been analyzing the situation for a long time. On the one hand, Zbigniew Nosowski, he's the editor-in-chief of the Catholic liberal magazine Więz, which means connection. And so he's positioned in Warsaw. And on the other hand, we have Tomasz Ociepka. He's the director of the analysis center, Jagiellonian Club, and he's located in Krakow. So I would like to start with Tomasz Ociepka and have a look at the political situation. So how do you see the electoral campaign? What were for you decisive moments? How do you see how the different parties deal with each other? And what do you expect? What kind of political constellation? So will there be a change now in government? And last but not least, so of course, there are different scenarios of who could form the government. So sometimes with the involvement of peace, others without the involvement of peace. So what is your opinion about this? So I will provide you 5 to 7, maximum of 10 minutes to give us a short overview of the political situation. So how was the electoral campaign? What outcome do you predict? So we are looking forward to your ideas.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Can I be heard well? Yes. Great. Well, this has been by far the most primitive electoral campaign I have ever witnessed in Poland. The level of, the degree of assigning badwill to the opponent, the manipulative presentation of the opponents, the search for themes, for subjects that could polarize the society and, I mean, the voters, has been by far the biggest. And for anyone who looks for any merits in the campaign, for anyone who would like to get in imagination what kind of policy a certain party would pursue if elected, this campaign has not provided, I think, any close to nothing valuable. And by the way, I'm wondering for the long-term effect for the democracy, if it's true that in democracy politicians look for how to try to make an image of people who are similar to voters, so that it's easy to identify with them. I think we have a serious gap here, because in our everyday life we don't treat even the people that we don't like the way that politicians treat one another in this campaign. One particular aspect of this campaign which attracted my attention, which I paid attention to, I would say, is quite unintuitive and unobvious practical absence of foreign policy issues in the campaign, which is strange given the events in the world and the alleged growing role of Poland in international policy. I think it's not only alleged, I think it's real. It seems that parties don't think this is a field where they could attract voters. Law and Justice actually enjoys propaganda of security, presenting this party as an entity that guarantees security for Poles. I would say this has been one of the most important threats in Law and Justice campaign. But even that is embedded rather in a domestic policy paradigm than international. So if you, for example, if you'd like to know what kind of model of relations with Germany the particular parties would pursue, you wouldn't learn it from their messages. As far as the results that I expect are concerned, there are multiple scenarios possible. I expect a stalemate after the elections, parties' inability to form a stable government, and a sort of temporary minority government, and snap elections within 3 to 6 months. So such a scenario is far from certain, but I understand you asked me for a personal expectation, and that's it. In such a scenario, the role of the President Andrzej Duda, increases, because he traditionally, and per law, per constitution, he nominates the Prime Minister, who later needs to fight for the majority in the parliament that would support his cabinet. And while this role of the president is largely ceremonial when there is a clear winner, I don't think there will be one. And I think I'm in the 7 minutes now that you mentioned. Is there anything you would like me to elaborate on?
For the moment, I think it's okay. Thank you very much. Even better if we are starting a little bit shorter. Mr. Nosowski, we heard about the political campaign in Poland, and would have liked to have in a second step, Entschuldigung, ich gehe wieder ins Deutsche, das kommt davon, genau.
I move back to German. So in a second step, I would like to have a look at the situation in the society and in church. So very often in different analysis, we can read that the Polish society is split up in 2 camps. So also along the political line, so peace, law and justice, and the civic platform on the other side. So on the one hand, it's said that we have this large group of people that are in favor of an open, Europe-oriented society, and on the other hand, we have another large group that would have a national Christian orientation. So how do you see that? So is this true, this analysis, that we have the split in society? And if yes, well, how can you see that? So let's start with that maybe. And then I would like to give you the opportunity to give us an impression about church. But let's first talk about the societal challenges, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you much for the invitation. I think that I may be an example of a society, if you ask me about a society, since I had a very hard day and I'm tired now. And in the same way, society is tired, Polish society is tired with precisely what you described in the question, which is one of the divisions in the Polish society. Polish society is tired with polarization. And this is a new phenomenon. And this narrative of polarization seems for both biggest players at the Polish political scene to be in their favor. Both Law and Justice very much wanted to define this campaign against Donald Tusk as the greatest danger, as the evil, as the pure evil, even as once Jarosław Kaczyński said. And at the same time, not using such aggressive language, but very openly, the main message of the civic platform was against law and justice. And our think tank in Więz laboratory made a research a couple of months ago where we found out that this language of polarization is not only, as everybody knows, very harmful for the society. It simply kills the society, I would say. It kills the bonds in the society, but it's also, people are also, the number of people who are tired with it is growing. And I think this end of this election campaign brings some signs that this era of polarization is slowly coming to an end. We've had on latest Monday debate of all the parties in the state television, which in the perception of all the observers, almost all the observers, was won by smaller parties. That three smaller parties of different ideologies were the ones who succeeded out of this polarization. Of course, two of them, which for sure, if possible, form the government with civic platform, not with Law and Justice. It is the left, and the second committee is called the Third Way, which is a coalition of agrarian peasant party and how it's difficult to identify on the political spectrum party Poland 2050. They most probably will get better results than expected, and this is why I think that even more possible scenario at the moment, I would say, than Mr. Ociepka said, is that a winner of the elections will not be the winner. Mm-hmm. I mean that Law and Justice will get the first place, but will be unable to form the government because the right-wing Konfederacja, radical right-wing group, clearly doesn't want to enter into any coalition with Law and Justice. The best scenario for them is to provoke new elections in the coming months, and they will surely get better results in the coming months, showing themselves as an alternative to right-wing voters. Therefore, I would expect the most possible scenario, in my opinion, is that first, Law and Justice will be asked by the president to form the government. They will fail, and then there will be another attempt, and the president will have to ask to propose to form a government to the second party in the elections. It will be a civic platform, and they may be able to form a government with two smaller groups. If my perception is correct, and this may mean beginning of an end of polarization in Polish politics, which dominated it for almost 20 years.
Yeah, thank you very much for the clear statement. The winner will not be the winner, and so probably we will not have a clear result. Ja, nach den Wahlen, das heißt jetzt nicht, dass sozusagen oder
So, well, it can be that after the elections is before the elections again. So you have clearly described that. So I would like to briefly discuss you the orientation of the churches. So the church, what is their attitude? What is their position? And how does the church make use of politics? Because obviously we have a close proximity of the Law and Justice Party to the church, and peace or the Law and Justice Party goes to masses, for example, or has close connections to clergy. So which actors are positioned where in the hierarchy, and are there also other civic groups maybe that are oriented in another way? And also in view of the question that churches are in transformation themselves at the moment. So in a survey, it was said that only 71% of Polish people still declare themselves to be Catholic, and compared to 2011, this is a decline of 16%. So also the Polish Catholic Church is faced with huge challenges. Would you say, does the church win or does it lose if it gets too close to politics?
Well, I think that in the long run, the Roman Catholic Church in Poland, which is the dominant denomination, as everybody knows in our country, has already lost through its close proximity with the party in power. I call this relationship a concubinage, just to define it through something which is not legally defined, which is sometimes hot and fruitful. Everybody sees it, but it's not legal. Yeah? And it's in the case of churches even against its own rules, because everybody knows that the basic rule of the Catholic Church in its social teaching is that the church should not be represented by any political party. And of course, it's only institutional church, but this connection between leadership of the Polish Bishops' Conference and the governing party is very strong. I think they, on the part of the Polish bishops, it's like this because they truly believe that they try to save Christian civilization in this way. Because if everybody is falling down, things are changing so much in the contemporary world, so we should save as much as possible from what we've had here, and that's in my opinion self-understanding of why this coalition is formed. But if you ask about election campaign, this present election campaign, always in such discussion there is a search for new phenomena. I would say that there is one very important new phenomenon in this election campaign about the role of the church. It may be defined in 4 words: who cares about the church? I mean a phenomenon that position of the institutional church stops being an important subject of public debate. Of course, journalists always will write about it, but it doesn't cause big tensions. It's connected with the process of secularization that started, and in some comparative data, especially Polish youth is secularizing itself at an unprecedented pace, in the quickest way, comparing to any other European societies, and especially among young people, this position, who cares about the church, is getting more and more important. There was a good example of some guidelines published by the Bishops' Council for Social Affairs. They published a kind of very short document called Guidelines of a Catholic Voter, but they didn't cause any wider discussion. For instance, we criticized this document in Więz. Well, there were many readers of these arguments, but only in a limited Catholic world. It didn't cause any wider social debate. This is an example of how the church's role is getting weaker through last 30 years of Poland's history.
Mhm. Ja, vielen herzlichen Dank für diesen Einblick in diese.
Thank you very much for this insight regarding the changing situation of the church. So I would like to remind you in the audience that you can already write your questions in the chat now, should you have any questions, and we would be ready to answer them. But I would ask Tomasz Ociepka, or would like to give him the opportunity to also have his say of what we say, the societal situation, the church situation. So what is your point of view regarding the influence of church or their role in the campaign and so on? What do you say that? So what Mr. Nosowski said, do you agree with that or not?
Actually, my view is quite consistent with the one that Mr. Nosowski presented. I would just, there is one thing I would challenge perhaps, because from what Mr. Nosowski said, you could think that the say of the church in politics, in election, has been important so far, and now it's diminishing. I would say so. The belief that the position of the church in certain elections matters has been common, but has it ever been true? Isn't there a gap between reality and perception? Because I remember quite well that in 1995, so as many as 28 years ago, an overt atheist, post-communist Aleksander Kwaśniewski, won presidential elections. 5 years later, he won again in the first round. And he didn't really have the support of the church. He was quite opposed by the church, but yet he made it. So for me, it looks like bishops believe that what they say matters for the political outcomes, that politicians share this view, but voters don't. But okay, this is rather a question of historical nature and not current one. And when it comes to the society, well, firstly, I would laugh so much that Mr. Nosowski is right, that the society is tired with polarization. But, well, given the way that parties behave, the trends they pursue, it seems that they believe in the power of polarization. And I rather think of the parties as rather professional. They have their own opinion polls. They have their own PR specialists. So I think that I'm not saying that they can't be wrong, but I think that they know what they do and where to search for the desirable tactics. And if I can complement anything about what I said before, about what Mr. Nosowski said, well, if we look at this election strictly as sports competition, that interesting aspect is that after exit polls are published on Sunday evening, and even after the official results are announced, probably on Tuesday, on Wednesday, it's quite likely that we will still not know where we are, because no clear conclusion could be drawn from the elections. So in this aspect, this election is interesting. And the society, I believe we are indeed in a turning point but this actually concerns the future, the longer future than Sunday, where it's not obvious to what kind of needs, desires, views the political parties should appeal. I believe there have been changes in the society that have not been identified yet by politicians and maybe even by sociologists. And after that initial period of 1989-2004, where it was obvious that the ambition not only of Poland but also of ordinary Poles is to join the structures of the West, and the maybe more vague period of from 2003-4 to now, where it was, I think, in the center of societal focus. It was how to benefit from the new opportunities and how to make these benefits accessible to everyone. Which actually, and I think actually, law and justice has some real achievements on this field. I think that new sentiments are born in the society, and sociologists need to identify them, politicians need to address them, and this will matter in election campaigns later this decade.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have a first question in the chat, and meine erste Frage im Chat, die würde ich gerne.
We have a first question in the chat, and I would like to take that up. So the question is, so the change, so this change of attitude towards Ukraine, what is the reason? Were there church reactions and so on? So the attitude towards Ukraine. So Mr. Morawiecki in interviews said that delivering weapons to Ukraine would have to be reduced, maybe. So obviously it was about cereals and so on that should not be supplied and so on. So maybe Mr. Ociepka, could you start with that? The change in attitude.
Okay. So I understand we are speaking about government foreign policy now and about Morawiecki. So, well, in a scenario when law and justice loses power, this will actually become irrelevant. But if they hold it up, I wouldn't go too far in assigning bad intents to Morawiecki's statement that you mentioned. It is true that Poland will not provide much more weapon to Ukraine, because everything that could be given has been largely given already. And when it comes to the relation with Ukraine, the government has a feeling an impression that Zelensky's administration turned the sides and is not considering Poland as an important ally, and they are looking for leverage in the international policy elsewhere, including Germany. Yes. I guess that probably you were rather surprised when you had Zelensky's proposal to make Germany a member of the permanent member of the UN Security Council. And as far as I know, they prepare a reaction to Zelensky's shift after the election. I don't think anything will change. I don't believe anything will change when it comes to making the territory of Poland accessible to the transfer of military aid from the West, from the US, from the UK, other countries. Because simply the effort of the Ukrainian army on the front is in the best interest of Poland too, and I don't think anything will change here. But I expect change of attitude in general relations with Ukraine, also when it comes to Ukraine's European ambitions and the ambitions to join the European Union. This will be definitely a conditional cooperation now, and again, Ukraine will be treated as a partner at best, and not as an ally, which, by the way, Ukraine has always been. This was the status of Ukraine, a partner and not an ally. I don't think that the positions of Ukrainian government in another aspect than the war has been the one that you expect of a friend. And yeah, so this would be my forecast of the future Ukrainian-Polish relationship.
Dankeschön. Herr Nosowski, vielleicht könnten Sie noch mal auch einen Blick werfen auf die...
So thank you, Mr. Nosowski. Maybe you can also talk about the solidarity with Ukraine also as regards the refugees, where Poland has received a lot of refugees from Ukraine. So what is the current situation there and what is the mood there? Could you briefly add something regarding this?
Well, the most thing would be in connection with what Mr. Ociepka said, that this change of language, I would even say more change of language than change of policy by the government, was in the election campaign was a function of internal politics. It served some internal goals and not external. Simply, Law and Justice very much wanted to get support also from these sectors of Polish society which are quite tired with Ukrainians' presence everywhere, with some problems that it causes. There are no big tensions about it, but there are tensions. And since Konfederacja, the radical, the right-wing party, is playing this anti-Ukrainian card very strongly. Also, Law and Justice wanted to show itself as something that represents Polish interests, and it means Polish interests may be also in, as we saw also in the case of other economic examples, may be in contrast with Ukrainian interests, and that's their goal is to defend Ukrainian interests. And of course, as far as general situation is concerned, I think it's the most important thing that I admire of this government is the fact that how they involved big state money for the help to Ukrainians, and finally supported this grassroots initiatives to start to help people. And finally, Polish state gave really a lot of support, institutions, and simply money to Ukrainians living here, and this is something that has to be applauded, definitely.
Okay, vielen Dank. Ich würde gerne Sie noch bitten, dass Sie vielleicht noch 2, 3 Sätze.
So could you maybe say 2 or 3 sentences regarding the role of the Konfederacja party? So it's not our main topic here, but it would be interesting how you see the role of this party.
Well,
I'm speaking to mainly German audience, so I'm not sure whether this comparison is fruitful, and much better the situation. But of course, Konfederacja is often compared to Alternative für Deutschland, and there are some aspects in which it is true, including this one that I have already mentioned, that nobody wants to be in coalition with Konfederacja, and they don't want to be in any coalition because they want to get stronger thanks to a general mass in politics. This is how they present themselves as a right-wing alternative to this stupid politics. They have changed language a bit, even if they have the same. They have younger leaders, but even those leaders change language. For instance, the most popular leader now, Sławomir Mencen, does not use anymore his language of saying no to Jews, to European Union, to women's rights, to everything. He's trying to present himself in a more positive way, based mainly on economic libertarianism. And so this is something what brings for them some support from younger sectors of Polish society. But this phenomenon, it's important to notice also that Konfederacja seemed to be much more popular in the polls 2 or 3 months ago than today. So they are not able to use this fuel for their own support. They even lose some support when people looked closer at what really is behind it. So I do not expect that it grows, especially if Law and Justice uses very radical language as it is doing right now.
Ja, vielen herzlichen Dank. Ich sehe schon einige sehr
Thank you very much. So I see very interesting questions in the chat and would like to hand over to Marlies Schneider now and would like to ask her whether she can share some of the questions. Yes, for sure. So there are 2 blocks actually, and I would like to start with the political block and then another one regarding the church. So there were 2 questions. So whether Europe and Germany played a role in the election campaign. So was there criticism about the European Union or criticism about the German government? So also requirements or requests for payments of reparations did this still play a role? And so this view on Europe and Germany, did this play an important role in the election campaign? Or maybe is this a misperception from Germany? Is this just misinformation by German audiences or something? So Mr. Ociepka, could you start?
The issue of reparations itself is not fictional, and I'm not surprised that it raises interest in Germany. Does it play an important role? Well, I would say so. It's one of the components of law and justice propaganda on the German part, German part, and or rather anti-German, being quite frank. I don't even look at it as part of policy or politics. I look at it as propaganda. They sometimes in the election campaign, especially the particular these politicians who are involved in this topic reminded it from time to time. It was far from dominating the campaign itself. I would say that even in the German skeptic or anti-German propaganda, they rather focused on Germany's alleged intent to let refugees into Europe in as big numbers as possible. So yeah, I would say the issue of reparations in the campaign was rather secondary, for it was factual, I agree. Another and probably the most harmful, I think, from my perspective, anti-German part of this campaign was were constant attempts to present Donald Tusk as a German, which, by the way, is a sheer nonsense. And Donald Tusk is Pole, and actually, it's unclear what would it mean. That it's like they say that he's a German and period, and everything is clear. And so this is based on a traditional, I would say, anti-German sentiment and appeals to it.
If I may add something to it.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. You may be surprised as a German audience if I tell you which name of a German politician was most often used in the Polish election campaign. And it is not somebody who plays, who is in the first round of German internal politics. This person is Manfred Weber. Manfred Weber was very often presented as the boss of Donald Tusk. In the Law and Justice propaganda, they simply wanted to present Tusk as not being able to decide things on his own because he's always subject to someone in Germany. Previously, it was Angela Merkel. Now it's Manfred Weber as his boss in the European People's Party. So the name of Manfred Weber was very often used as a kind of scapegoat, I would say, in this campaign. And so this campaign was on the part of the government, and the ruling party was very much anti-German. I fully agree with Mr. Ociepka. It was also to some extent anti-European, also on the part of civic platform. There were clear messages that if you want that if Law and Justice wins the third term, they will for sure decide that Poland should leave the European Union. And since Europe is still a value very much cherished by Poles, they wanted to use this language to get winners, to get support of undecided who see profits coming to Poland from membership of the European Union.
Vielen Dank. Ich würde gerne jetzt noch zwei Themen, die
Thank
Kirche...
you. So I would like to ask you about two topics that concern the church. So the first to you, Mr. Nosowski. You said that the voice of the church or the recommendation of the bishops does not have so much influence as before, as in former times. So there was one question that has to do the different hierarchical levels and whether the people living in the countryside, well, if their local priest tells them who to vote for, they will follow the local priest. Then, because the bishops, there are also different opinions there as regards the attitude or which recommendations were given, or whether it's not just the local church that really tells people what to vote for and what they orientate themselves as.
Well, it's not the case even, I would say, of local parish priests telling parishioners who they should support, but more of showing a coalition between the governing party and values represented by the church, which are now attacked, and this is the political grouping that will defend our values. Yeah, so it's in a broader sense, and of course there are such situations still. But what I said before was about a new phenomenon. We are simply in a transition. The old phenomena, like presenting oneself by the candidates as closely connected to the church, they are present. I live in the suburbs of Warsaw. On the last Sunday, I saw a candidate who presented close to my parish church. His plan for this last Sunday before elections, he had 6 meetings in the countryside. And 3 of these 6 meetings were located by the church. Yeah, so if he gave a place location where the meeting takes place, it was always by the church, by the church, by the church. Of course, so he was a candidate of Law and Justice. Yeah? And they distribute electoral leaflets for people leaving the Sunday masses, etc. So this phenomenon goes on. But at the same time, the new phenomenon, which I mentioned before, and this is, I would say, more a new trend, and it means something important for the future, was this approach: who cares? People who were not at all interested in the church's position. In the same way, let me add one more comment to how Mr. Ociepka commented my statement. You mentioned 1995 elections and Aleksander Kwaśniewski's victory. But we have to remember that the lowest point of social authority of the Catholic Church in Poland was 1993. this position was much lower than even today. After 1989, we had very strong, very quick loss of authority by the Catholic Church, and then the trend reversed. It was like this, that in 1989, when the breakthrough happened, and the end of communism, 90% of the Polish society felt positively about Catholic Church's activity, so the authority might be defined at the level of 90%. Throughout only 4 years, this support dropped dramatically to only 40%. So the situation was much worse for the institutional church than it is today. And only since 1993, thanks to some reasons, there's no time to speak about them, the trend reversed. Then for many, quite almost 20 years, this church authority was stable at the level of 60-65%. Then it started with the new government of peace to fall slowly. Now it's at the level of some 40-45% again. Yeah. So this is a changing phenomenon, and victory of Aleksander Kwaśniewski was a part of this strong loss of authority by the church at the beginning of 90s.
Vielen Dank. Ich würde gerne jetzt an Sie beide noch.
So thank you. I would like to ask. Can you say something regarding the discussions about abortion? So if the opposition won this, or if there was a new coalition, then so the rules on abortions could not change so quickly because there was also a judgment by the Constitutional Court. So how could you go then? So their idea is to have a referendum about abortion. So how important is this question in the electoral campaign or also in society? And what could be the future about abortion? Mr. Ociepka, would you start, please?
If opposition wins, then it still doesn't tell us much about attempts to legalize abortion, because it's not that all deputies from the opposition support it. If it happens that I don't think it's likely, but if it happens that in the parliament that will be formed after, that will be elected actually on Sunday, those who support legalization of abortion on demand have majority, then they can certainly pass such a bill. Such a bill would be unconstitutional, but let's be clear: the level of respect of constitution in Poland is not quite high. And let me emphasize: I have absolutely no reason to believe that Civic Platform and its allies will have more respect for constitution than Law and Justice had over the last 8 years. But anyway, as long as President Duda is the president, and that's until 2025, he has the right to object, to veto any bill. He would veto such a bill, and it's absolutely impossible, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely impossible for me to think that there will be a 60% qualified majority in the parliament to overthrow his veto. So that's on part of abortion. I think you asked about something else, but sadly I forgot. Can you?
Das Referendum, ob es ein Referendum geben könnte.
The referendum, whether there could be a referendum.
Could there be this is even more vague than a question whether there could be legislation without a referendum allowing abortion. Though this indeed, when it comes, when we are speaking about the opposition, it's we have Civic Platform, and it's an official point, it's an official postulate of the Civic Platform to legalize abortion without referendum. The left has the same stance. And the so-called third way, the third way is just an electoral vehicle, an alliance of traditional Polish Farmers' Party and the new entity on the scene, that is Poland 2050, with its characteristic leader Szymon Hołownia. They support referendum. Yes, they don't take official stance in abortion as such. They want to give the voice to the Poles, which is again severely objected by the left and the civic platform, because they think that this is not an issue that should be decided in a referendum. But really, as long as they don't have the majority in the parliament, I don't want to be speaking too much about it, because it's much ado about nothing, as far as I'm concerned.
Dankeschön. Herr Nosowski, möchten Sie noch was ergänzen zu diesem Punkt?
Mr. Nosowski, would you like to add anything regarding this?
Well, I agree with this political analysis. It's not about. I don't think anything important has to be added. Maybe only one thing that it's hard to imagine. It's also possible that if the opposition wins and forms a new government, it's possible that they may have a kind of deal prepared that would delegalize some decisions by the Constitutional Tribunal. It would be hardly constitutional, as my predecessor said, but they may try to do it in this way, and also in this way to come back to the situation before the 2020 decision of the tribunal, but it's hardly possible in my opinion.
Ja, vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much. So I would like to come back to one other topic that is discussed a lot in both countries, and this is migration. So maybe we can have a look at that. Which role does migration play in the electoral campaign? Also as regards the EU context, where Poland, together with Hungary, was against the asylum compromise and so on, and at the same time already in summer announced a referendum regarding this. And two of the four questions of the referendum that will also be voted on Sunday also have to do with migration. So it's about border barriers to Belarus, and on the other hand, it's the migration of illegal refugees from the Middle East and Africa. So that's how the referendum question is phrased then for Sunday. And so it's clearly against the EU asylum compromise then. So which role do you see, or how important was this topic of migration in the electoral campaign, and what kind of perspectives do you see for the time after the elections? So Mr. Nosowski, would you like to start?
Well, it's not by chance that I haven't spoken yet anything about the referendum, which is also going to take place on Sunday, together with the elections, because I don't treat this referendum seriously. It's first of all, it has two goals in my opinion, to help Law and Justice to focus debate on the issues that they find that are useful for them, and the other goal is to help to spend a lot of state money or party money on initiatives entitled pro-referendum, where, as a matter of fact, it's also a party propaganda. There were some initiatives like this, formally organized by the independent foundations, as a matter of fact, organized and financed by the government or by the ruling party. So it's just a play in the campaign and not a real referendum. And most of the opposition just does not treat this referendum also seriously, and what voters do now is they explain one to another how to take part in the elections, not taking part in the referendum. Yeah? how to do it legally, because all the votes will be given together by the election commission, and you have to say, no, I do not want to vote in the referendum. Yeah, then it's illegal. But question of migration is very important. It played an important role thanks to these two questions, and also thanks to another factor. It was a movie by Agnieszka Holland, famous Polish film director, Green Border. About the movie is entitled Green Border. It is about the events at the Polish-Belarusian border in 2021, yet before the wall was built with the decision of the Polish government. This caused a lot of discussions. For instance, on one hand, opposition voters were happy that it was announced that Agnieszka Holland will receive a prize in November at the film festival in the Vatican. Whereas on the other hand, voters and politicians of the government presented even viewers of this movie as simply pigs. Even this morning, Deputy Minister of Justice said at the press conference that Agnieszka Holland should be given a prize of a golden pig for this movie. So it played an important role, but I was just to say something serious, because these things are simply stupid. The biggest Polish problem in this case is, and we've been repeating it in Więz for 20 years almost, that Poland has no migration policy. And by the way, the Green Border movie by Agnieszka Holland showed very much that it's not only Poland does not have a migration policy, but the whole European Union does not have a good migration policy and good idea what to do in this situation. So we are all very much in need of searching for new solutions, because the old ones do not work, definitely.
Ja, thank you very much. Vielen Dank. Und Tomasz Ociepka, bitte.
Tomasz Ociepka, please.
Whoever asked this question, thank you for reminding me there will be such a question in the referendum. You are correct, but I actually forgot about it completely because this referendum is irrelevant to such an extent. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a shame because the way that direct democracy, the referendum, is employed in Polish politics is very harmful to this tool of democracy. I'm not a fan of direct democracy to the Swiss extent, but I think it's still a sort of tool of communication between the society and the state that could be utilized in a good manner, and Polish politicians destroy it. When it comes to migration issue, I wouldn't like to repeat what Mr. Nosowski said. I agree with most of it. There is definitely a strong sentiment in Polish society and also among Polish politicians against any kind of illegal immigration. So even if you look into the program of the left, or you talk to the politicians of the left, at least what they say when they talk in the media, you will see there is no tolerance for any sort of illegal crossing of the border. There is a lot of inconsistency in the policy of law and justice. Just to be clear, no other party in Poland's history, in the modern Poland history, let in so many legal immigrants as Law and Justice. Over past decade, Poland has ceased to be a monoethnic society, we are now somewhere between a monoethnic and multicultural society. We are neither of them. We are somewhere between. This mainly concerns Ukrainians who were migrating to Poland long before the war started and the refugees came here. By the way, this allowed the refugees to assimilate in Poland quite easily because there were existing nets of Ukrainians living in Poland. But it's not only about Ukraine, it's actually migrants from different directions, even exotic ones like Bangladesh were coming to Poland. This was all done to satisfy the needs of Polish entrepreneurs. I would say this will be the most long-lasting effect of Morawiecki's government, is that change in the composition of Polish society. I don't think many of these people will leave Poland. And by the way, this has happened without any consultancy, or any consulting with the society. Poles were never asked if they want the society to go in that direction. And I think that whatever we think about the effects of the migration, it's quite scandalous from the democratic point of view.
Vielen herzlichen Dank. Ich würde in die Schlusskurve einbiegen und Ihnen zum Abschluss die Frage.
Thank you very much. So to conclude, I would like to ask you a question that I can also read in the chat. So which topic and which event could overcome the polarization in society? What could overcome the polarization in society? Mr. Nosowski, would you go first?
Of course, polarization still is one of the important phenomena in Polish society. If I said that the society is tired, it was also about saying it was my perception of a new trend that is visible. The question is what might overcome. I think that it's a very important question with no easy answer. In my opinion, it might be overcome only if other politically organized groups become stronger, and if the situation allows another candidates than leaders of civic platform or law and justice to play most important roles in the Polish state. It means that depending on the results of the final results of the elections, which are not predictable at the moment, it may happen that this possible coalition about which I said before will have to decide among themselves who takes which positions, prime minister, future candidate for president in 2025, who will be the speaker of the parliament, etc. These are main roles. And if smaller parties in the possible coalition talks manage to get some to build their position as really strong, this may change for longer this illness of Polish democracy, that it will not be anymore like Democrats and Republicans in the United States.
Mhm. Danke. Herr Ociepka.
Mr. Ociepka?
Yes, well, the election on Sunday will be sixth in a row when Law and Justice and Civic Platform will take first two places. They only switch the first and the two. Well, it's quite obvious that the polarization ends when smaller parties increase their support. But I'm wondering about the social drivers of that process, because apparently Poles don't want to, I mean, Poles enjoy voting Law and Justice and Civic Platform, and all the surveys showed that the older voter becomes, the more prone he is to vote to one of these parties. If only people under 25 had voting rights, the results would be completely different, and the turnout would be also much lower because the youngest people are the least active in their in civic life. Like I said, I have some hope in that, in the gap between the way politicians treat one another and the way that we in our everyday life treat other people, even those we don't like. Because that gap, in my opinion, is such huge that it gives me some hope.
Das ist auf jeden Fall ein gutes Schlusswort. Ich danke Ihnen sehr, sehr herzlich.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zbigniew Nosowski and Tomasz Ociepka, for this very enlightening information and background, the situation of Polish society, Polish church in times of elections. So the winner will not be the winner, Mr. Nosowski said at the beginning. So it's still open, the electoral campaign. And so we will know more on Monday. We will know the results then, and we hope that at least these polarizing trends, that they will be reduced again. So thank you very much for the participation. And I would like to thank the interpreter who did the translation tonight and helped that we could understand each other better. So I would like to wish you a pleasant evening, and I hope that we will see each other again at the latest, the next issue of Listening to the East. And we will invite you in due time to this. Thank you very much. All the best to you.